Hey there, how are you, everybody? Welcome to today to our exciting reading session today. My name is Vince Gassi. I'm coming to you from north of the border here in Toronto, Canada, where it's 30 degrees Celsius, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm here with my two very esteemed colleagues and very good friends, Chris Bernotas and Michaela Graham. And we'll be sharing some really, really good music with you today and some other goodies. So, Chris.
Yes, sir. So I am so happy to have you guys with us today. And like Vince said, please add any questions in the chat as we go along. We want it to be very informal, kind of like a regular live reading session where everybody's playing in the same room. And there's always great questions in those sessions where people are asking specific things like, hey, does that clarinet part really work for the middle school level? And questions like that. So please feel free to ask anything as we go. The chat part of this is kind of the exciting part. I think we're going to get right into the music. What do you think, Vince?
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. So the first piece is actually one of mine. Actually, it's an arrangement that I did called Holiday Rock. And it's only the first 6 notes of the B-flat scale. And what I actually did was I went through Sound Innovations, Book 1, to the halfway point. And that's where a grade half would come from. What have kids learned at this point in the book? And I only included things that were taught up to that point, which probably correlates to other method books as well. But you know for sure this specifically will correlate well with that. So you're going to notice there are no dotted notes, no dotted half notes. There are no dynamics. There are no articulations. So you would think that would make it easier to write, but it actually doesn't. So this includes Angels We Have Heard on High, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, Deck the Halls, Dreidel Song, and Jingle Bells. And I try to do a good job of passing around the melody so everybody stays engaged throughout. So let's give a listen to Holiday Rock. There you have Holiday Rock. Before I pass it off to Vince to talk about our next piece, I do want to mention that we are highlighting just a few of the pieces from our 2020 catalog. And you're going to see the promo that will include all of the releases because there's so many good ones. It's actually really difficult to narrow down some of the choices. There's so many good ones. But you'll see in the chat box there is a link to the PDF so you can explore some more when we are offline. All right, Vince, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So our next piece is called Escape from Thunder Mountain, and it's a piece by Scott Watson at the grade 1.5 level. And I really like this piece. It's I always like pieces in C Dorian or a Dorian mode. Scott is a great writer. He always includes a lot of harmonic and rhythmic goodies in his pieces. A lot of interesting things to really dig into and take apart. In Escape from Thunder Mountain, there's a lot of interesting percussion writing, including a tam-tam part and a beautiful chorale section at measure 57. There's some descending pyramid in the trumpets and the horns at measure 73 that it really caught my ear. And I love the chord at measure 76. Really exciting piece. Let's have a listen.
super dramatic. He always writes such dramatic. I was thinking also, he also writes a lot of transparency in some of his orchestrations. You go from this big full sound, then all of a sudden there's just a couple of voices. And he always paints such a nice auditory texture. I think I just made that up, auditory texture.
I like it.
Yeah, auditory texture or his piece?
Both.
All right, good. The next piece we're going to listen to is In Search of Yeti by Kirk Vogel, Colorado composer, great guy. It's a grade 1.5. It's in C minor. The opening is very dramatic, so it's got a sense of wonder, like you're literally in search of something, in this case, Yeti. And it's really interesting. A lot of percussive sounds. You'll hear, I think a flexitone is in there, but a lot of really creative use of percussion. A very energetic and rhythmic bass line is something that I really think is greatly featured in this. And the teaching point that I like for this one is there's an 8th note scale type of motion that happens around measure 49 and in other places. But I think it's a really great way of teaching kids how to play as a group or even individually, getting your scales in action, kind of putting your technique to the test inside of the piece. So here is In Search of Yeti. I also hear a little James Bondy kind of harmony in that one, which I think is really interesting too, because you kind of are going on a search and it's a little bit of a mystery. All right, along with doing a reading session like this, we also are including a couple of poll questions. So that is going to be our very next thing. So if you check out the poll, the question here is, have you ever composed music for your band? That's a very important thing, and here are your answers. Yes, and I love it. I have tried, but not successfully. I would like to, but I don't know where to start. And no, and I really don't want to. So it'd be really interesting to see some responses on that. And while we kind of take a look at some of those answers, I do want to address a couple of things. The first thing I'd like to address is about diversity, and just mention that at Alfred Music, we're very concerned with the conversation of diversity, and we're very involved with that conversation, and it's very important to us. We recognize that we all want to encourage everyone from all backgrounds to create, compose, and submit music. And we think that one of the greatest ways that we can help affect positive change is to really encourage and to ask people. And that's one of the reasons I have this poll question here. Is I want to know if you thought about writing music before. And if you haven't, why haven't you? Is it because of fear? Maybe we can talk about some of those things. Vince and I later on are going to talk a little bit about the compositional process. So that's something that's really important to think about, is writing music. Band directors know students and are very successful in writing band music. So we're going to see how that works out. I feel like this answer of I would like to, but I don't know where to start is a really common one. So it's going to be great to really chat about that a little bit later on. And while we're just wrapping up a little bit of response there, I do want to point out a couple of things that we have available in Smart Music. There is a Smart Music Compose tool, and it's really great part of Smart Music. You have, of course, the practice and all the repertoire that's in there, but there is a compose feature that would be really helpful to use. And I believe we have a blog article popping up in the chat window to just kind of explore that feature. It'd be great for teachers to get started and really great for students to get started in that compositional process. Any kind of change, including the diversity change, is more powerful when it comes from the grassroots movement. And the best way to do that is to encourage people to write. That tool is one way of getting yourself and your students over that hump of just getting it started. I also do want to mention that Smart Music is available with a 30-day free trial, so be sure to check that out if you haven't used it yet. And then the last thing I want to mention is that the titles that have a little watermark that say Smart Music in today's reading session are already available in Smart Music. All right, I think that's going to bring us to the end of our poll section here, and I'm going to be passing it over to Vince, who's going to talk about a really cool project we did called Compose Yourself. Vince.
Yes. Yeah, this was a very cool project that Alfred composers had in conjunction with Smart Music. So we did a number of video composition lessons in video format, and each of them had a guided listening assignment, and they varied. So we had Chris did one on rhythm and meter. Katie O'Hara-Labrie did it on articulation. Phrasing and balance was by Mike Camiff. Scott Watson did one on modes and scales. And Jim Palmer, his was called Arranging Made Easy. I did one on melodic construction, how to construct, what makes a strong melody or an interesting melody, how to keep it interesting. And so I broke it down and we listened to various melodies and kind of deconstructed them, their contour, what intervals were mostly being used, how to write background melodies, and just the overall concept of phrasing. So these were excellent videos that I think there were a lot of people really, students had gone through these lesson plans and very in a very easy format. So I hope that you all check those out.
Yeah, I think, Vince, it's a good point to point out that these started being inspired by remote teaching, and that's coming back in a huge way right now. Remote teaching and resources for that. These were really welcomed by the music teaching community. They got a lot of downloads and their assignments. The idea was to try to take some of the burden off of teachers. Here are some pre-made assignments for you to share with your students so you can kind of help coach them along while you can't sit by their side. So please check those out and compose yourself. The link is in the chat. And I think we're going to get on to our next piece. Vince?
Yes, Defenders of the Realm by Jeremy Bell. This is a grade 1.5 or 1.5 in the debut catalog. And before I read the program notes that were written for this piece, I listened to the piece and I thought, wow, this is really very cinematic writing. And then I read the program note, and lo and behold, that's exactly what the composer had set out to do. And it's not an easy thing to do, to write for this level and make it sound big and very cinematic in scope. So we start with bold statement in the brass and lower winds. And the interesting thing, it alternates between 4/4 time signature and a halftime feel. At measure 12, it goes into a halftime feel. So very lovely introduction, heroic sounding choral writing. There's an optional trumpet solo in the last 4 measures that's really cool if you have a budding trumpet player. Lots of thundering percussion. Let's have a listen to this one. Okay, awesome piece. So the next piece we have to share with you is one that I wrote called Where Stand the Dauntless? And this was a commission piece written for a school here in the Toronto area for a middle school band. And I was just so impressed when I went out to meet them with how dedicated the music staff and the administration and the support that they gave the music department. It was just so impressive. So I had the title to this piece to start with, and of course I'm thinking, what a piece called "Where Stand the Dauntless?" Where stand the Dauntless? What would that sound like? So I started out with a fanfare, and it has this heroic feeling throughout. One of the things that I like to do, as well as every composer, but I like to write counterlines and moving parts. So after the introduction, when the main theme is stated, you'll hear some counterline to that. And then in the lyrical section, there's also some moving parts underneath the melody there. And of course, lyrical sections are always great opportunities to work on expressive playing. So take it away, Michaela.
Vince, you could put your camera on for a second. I mentioned a couple things in the chat. Are you up there?
Yeah,
I mentioned a couple things in the chat, Vince,
Thanks,
that I really like about your writing. I mentioned about Scott before, too, some of that transparency. But one of the things I always admire in your writing is you do an ABA format, right? It's this fast, slow, fast, but it's not a copy-paste fast, slow, fast. When we come back to the fast, you always have some kind of twist, whether it's a harmonic twist or you take a part of your theme and you move it around in different places, or it's that change in texture and timbre is always interesting to me, and it kind of catches you a little bit off guard, which to me is what makes it special. So
unity and unity and variety is one of the things I talk about in the Compose Yourself, is how much of the same, keeping something the same before it gets boring. You don't want to have too many new changes, because then that gets boring as well. So it's not always an easy balance to work out. You have to test it out a lot, and so I'm happy that this one really worked out.
Usually my family are the victims of me testing things out like that. So all right, going on to our next piece, we're going back to another Scott Watson piece, and this one is really interesting. It's called Rock Solid. It's a grade 1.5. We already said a lot of great things about Scott, so I don't need to go on about him anymore. However, I will tell you that this opening is really beautiful, and he has a great way of weaving his harmonies together in really interesting and creative ways. I particularly like measure 15, the Passante part, is where it gets really heavy, as what Passante would be. And it's very catchy. It's a little bit We Will Rock You-ish, I wrote in my notes here. See if you hear that too. But this piece, I think, was commissioned with, well, read the commission dedication, and I think that makes a little sense too. Measure 27, talking about pacing, is a great tempo change, and it comes just at the right time. See if you feel that same way when we get to measure 27. What else do I have here? The grace notes in this, it has grace notes at a grade 1.5 level. Your kids are going to be in love with being able to do this cool little grace note concept. The last note about this, measure 42, there are some trading of licks back and forth between the sections. And again, it's just maximum engagement for your students. They're gonna love this one, and so will teachers. Here, without further ado, is Rock Solid. Oh, are you still here? Me too. You just caught me rocking out. Is that piece awesome? It's just so catchy. I think everybody's going to love that, especially kids, and a lot of great teaching opportunities are in that. Sorry while I adjust my seat. All right, this next section, we're going to do another poll. Click on my poll screen here. As with every challenge that teachers are facing with hybrid school, remote school, who knows how things are going to meet, how kids are going to meet together in mixed groups, flexible music and adaptable music reimagined is becoming more important than ever. It's always been relevant. So let me, before I talk about it, here's the poll. Are you planning on using flexible instrumentation music this fall? Yes. No, I'll be using traditional only, or I'll be doing a mix. I'll be using both a mix of traditional and flexible orchestrations. Before the COVID pandemic happened, flexible music was around. It's not a new phenomenon, but it made really everybody think a little bit differently about how we construct it. And what it really did for us, it encouraged us to recreate a lot of our pieces. In fact, all the pieces that you're listening to today are going to be available in Flex format. In the new Alfred Flex and Bellwin Flex is another. If you look at our Bellwin reading session, all those pieces are in the Bellwin Flex new catalog. And you can see there's a website now. I'm going to let you in on a secret. This is a little bit of a sneak peek. If you go to www.alfred.com/flex, you're going to find a lot more information about our new Flex series. Very excited. And if you want more than that kind of information, you can join us. We're going to be doing flexible webinar. So we're going to actually explain not only how these pieces were written, but I'm going to actually talk through and show some of my finale files on how we constructed these series, both the Alfred Flex and Bellwin Flex, and show just how to use it. One of the things that makes me so proud to be an Alfred Music employee and partner is that we're here to support teachers. And that's been a mission of this company forever, and it will remain that. So I don't want to just work on a project and then let it go and say, okay, now do what you will with it. We want to help you use it how it needs to be used. And we want to support teachers in however you need to be supported by creating resources that you need, want, and use. So teacher input has always been important. So if you want to check out in the chat the flexible instrumentation for string and band, it's a combination because Flex series are both string and band. Log in for that register for that webinar. And then for strings only, we're doing something a little bit different. I won't tell you about that now, but you can see there, I see it right there, flexible instrumentation for string orchestra webinar. Make sure you register for that or forward that on to the orchestra director if it's not you, and join us for that one. All right, we are going to go back over to Vince, who is going to introduce our next piece. Take it away, Vince.
Oh, Vince, you're muted.
There we are. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Excellent.
perfect.
So I was just going to my notes for Todd Stalter's Escape Route. And, you know, I was telling Chris yesterday, you know, I taught, I was a band director for 25 years, and I taught some other things for another 8 years. Listening to all these great compositions, I almost want, I'm retired now, I've been retired for a year. I almost want to go back and be a band director again, but not totally. Retirement is just too good. So let's talk about Todd's piece. So lots of energy in this piece. It's an excellent piece for rhythmic workouts and some very interesting modal passages. He's writing in fourths and seconds, and it sounds like clusters. It really gives it an interesting sound. There is a lot for everyone to do. Some very nice woodwind passages here. And the percussion parts, in addition to the standard snare and bass and timpani cymbals, you have a cool, very, very cool open and closed hi-hat sound, a part that kind of goes through part of this piece, and some even woodblock. So lots of things for your, for your ear to grab onto, for your kids to dig into. And there's even some glisses on the trombones, they get to slide around a bit. So dig this Escape Route.
That is really cool. I love Todd's music. It's interesting because I said it's very intense, and he has intense music in very different ways than other intense. Intensity could be like big loud chords. He does it with all that rhythmically, with the harmonies, and with and then clear exposure of parts, just the woodblock part, and things like that. So cool. Hey, look at this. The next piece is mine. It's called Ride Through the Valley, and it's a grade 3 piece. It was a commission for Northern Valley Regional High School, and that's where Ride Through the Valley came from. It was a commission for a band day, a recruitment day, where the middle school came up to the high school and the kids all got to work on the piece together. So the idea of a ride through the valley was going through the school, going through the high school. So joining the school as an incoming freshman, and then you're going on your ride through the valley throughout the high school years. So with that in mind, I wanted the beginning to be an uplifting and exciting melody. So it's very driving, but in a happy sort of way. The center section is a bit reflective because we've all gone through high school, and there's definitely times through high school where you reflect on life and everything that's happening around you. And then if you're really careful, you might see it at measure 71. I had to put this very carefully in the music. The 2-page spread around measure 71, you will see a V in the music for Northern Valley. That was just a little inside thing that I wanted to make super special for these kids and for that school. So I hope that you enjoy this piece. Here is Ride Through the Valley.
That is an awesome piece. Well done, Chris. I love it. So the next piece, we are going to, and our final piece for today is Flamingo Road, a 2.5 grade level by Steve Hodges. And I have to say that any piece with a cowbell is cool, but this one also has a vibroslap as well. Yay. Lots of syncopation here that your kids can work on. And one of the nicest, most awesome, way cool development sections at measure 32. I really focus in on measure 32. It's so cool. Yeah, so as with all of these pieces, this one will really engage your students with the rhythmic fun and the harmonic goodies that are in there. They'll want to play it every day. They'll walk out of your band room singing this piece. So Michaela, take it away. This is Flamingo Road.
Yeah, I can even just say my my comments there. He has a great way of writing challenging parts that kids can really get through. That da da do da da do da da. That's something the kids are gonna have to practice, but they're gonna love hearing that. And I did mention another piece of Steve's called Jump Start, which I did with my band, and kids absolutely loved it. It was one of those ones that came back that they asked to play over and over and over again, and we did. We're gonna chat in just a second a little bit about writing. Vince, you can join me on here. If there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll come back and see if there are any in a little bit. But just one of the things, back to encouraging teachers to write music, band directors, and to encourage students to write music. We thought we would just take a couple seconds, not very long. We'll do this maybe in depth another time. But just a little bit about writing music, a little composition 101. One of the things I think that we all share when we get together at conferences, at least Vince and I do, is our little nerd fest conversations about, so what's your process for writing? And I know that one thing that Vince and I and probably everybody shares is fear, right? We're all fearful of the process and what it is, and maybe I'm not doing it right. And one of the things that I think we can do together is to help encourage people to give it a shot, is to maybe just talk about some of those fears. So Vince, let's talk just a little bit about your process. You're going to write a piece tomorrow. What do you do?
Well, it depends on who I'm writing it for. If it's a commission, I want to know something about who I'm writing, like the situation, the kids, the school. If it's just for the catalog, I want to come up with things that interest me. So if it's a particular story or maybe a poem that I've read, I was asked to write a piece for an orchestra. Actually, for this past June, a year ago, they commissioned me to write this piece for full orchestra. I think you heard it, Chris, on White and Wondrous Dawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard that.
And before I had the inspiration, of course, what am I going to write? Jerry Goldsmith, one of the greatest film composers, answered the very same question: what do you do when you get a new movie score to write? And he said, fear is a given. And because you have this fear of the blank page. So I did a lot of research, this about the group, and the group was this orchestra that was traveling to Europe, and they were going to go on tour and play all these concerts. And I found a poem that actually, it was called The Voyagers. And it just, the poem reminded me a lot about the excitement and energy that around that concept of traveling and sharing music with people. And so the poem became a way for me to structure the entire piece. I think it was an 8-minute piece. And so the fear lasted for about a week. And a piece that I thought was going to take me 6 months to write, it was done in a month. And as I said, it was an 8-minute piece for full orchestra. So it's the creative process is really wonderful, but it's very, can be scary and strange sometimes. When you have, Kourosh Dini said, creativity is the process of resolving vision. And I think that's the part that really scares people when they don't have the vision worked out of what they're trying to say. What do I say? But when you have that vision, here's what I want it to sound like. Here, like Ride Through the Valley has a very wonderful vision, right? And I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that once you decided on that vision, the piece wrote very quickly.
Yeah, I think once it gets started, you kind of get into it. It's the zone. You get in the zone. But it's really that first, when you sit down, like you do a lot of preparation. What is the piece going to be about? What is the inspiration? What is the concept? But there also is that day where you sit down and you have to hit buttons on this thing over here, right? You've got to hit some buttons. And it's that moment that, to me, is when it just all starts. And it's literally just getting it started. It's like starting the machine. And once it starts, you actually go, or at least I do, I kind of go in my head on that trip. And I imagine, what is this going to sound like? And what is it going to be like? There's also a difference in writing, everything you mentioned, a commission piece, a specific objective for a piece, or a piece with an educational purpose too. I want this piece to really focus on articulation and contrast. So that can be, just that concept can be an inspiration.
Yeah. But the creative process, I mean, if you envision it like a circle, here's the concept of the piece. Well, okay, now I'm going to do some experimentation. Well, now I'm going to reflect on what I did. And then I'm going to revise those ideas a little bit more. And as I revise my ideas, the concept actually starts to evolve as well. So you go down a road, you come back, and maybe you go down another road, and you try a lot of things out, and you work it out,
Yeah.
So
and you told me once. You told me once. Sometimes you find your best harmonies when you hit the wrong keys.
I because I don't have great piano technique, and my fingers hit the wrong notes, but then wait a second, that actually sounds really good. Yeah. And then I work through that, and sometimes becomes the basis of a piece.
That's right. Sometimes the wrong note is the very right note.
Is the right note. And another great quote I heard was, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. So don't let yourself be afraid, just to be filled with fear. Just do it in spite of the fear.
That's right. And I think the thing is, the key in this, to wrap this up, is get started. Give it a try. More on that later, but I do want to definitely highlight when you actually do take the plunge, and this is for everyone out there. Everyone can write music, and I want you to submit it. We at Alfred Music, we have submission process. You can go to www.alfred.com/contact us, and on that page you will find our submission guidelines. There's a lot of resource on there that you can search. Our guidelines: what is a grade level, what is grade 2, what is grade 3, how do things fall in? It's very important that you don't just write music, you have an intended purpose, but you also have to make sure it's appropriate for the audience that we're trying to distribute it to, which are students. So we want to make sure that you take care of that. Vince, I think you're going to wrap everything up for us here.
Right. I just want to say what an honor it is to be spending this time with all of you today. And, you know, I feel very fortunate to know you composers. I learned so much from listening to your music. Hopefully I haven't stolen anything, but if I have, it's not intentional. So over the next week, we're going to send out a replay video, and all the links that were provided today will be sent in an email. Michaela's going to drop the link for the certificate of attendance in the chat. And also very important, it means a lot to us. Please, please, please tell us how we did in the survey for today's session. And with that, see you next time.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.